November when he checked on some of his hives in Florida.
When I pulled into a bee yard in Florida, there was 400 hives of bees that 3 weeks before that looked great. And all of a sudden, here we got roughly 400 beehives that are totally empty.
The bees were all gone.
They're gone.
I mean, where'd they go?
Don't know. I mean, I literally got down and crawled around. I mean, seriously, I got down on my hands and knees and crawled around. And then there's no dead bees. There are no dead bees anywhere. I mean, you can't find any bees. They flew off someplace.
And never came back?
Never came home.
Had you ever seen that before?
No.
What, you're telling me that these people that dumped this AIDS-tainted blood in foreign countries, who killed children, have not been taken to task in the United States?
It's worse than that. The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. And not only they're dying, their family members are dying because they're becoming
Monday's earthquake in western China was the 25th significant earthquake this year. It's only May. In 2003, the USGS listed more than 70 significant earthquakes, more than the total number for the 70s, 80s, or the 90s.
This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller banking and business dynasty. After maintaining a close friendship with Nicholas Rockefeller, Aaron eventually ended the relationship, appalled by what he had learned about the Rockefellers and their ambitions.
I got a call one day from an attorney woman I knew, and she said, "Would you like to meet one of the Rockefellers?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to." And we became friends, and he began to divulge a lot of things to me. So he said to me one night, he said that there's going to be an event there, and out of that event, you're going to see we're going to go into Afghanistan, so we can run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We're going to go into Iraq to take the oil and establish a base in the Middle East, and we're going to go into Venezuela and try and get rid of Chavez. And the first two they've accomplished. Chavez they didn't accomplish. And he said you're going to see guys going into caves looking for looking for people that they're never going to find. You know, he was laughing about the fact that you have this war on terror. There's no real enemy. He's talking about how by having this war on terror, you can never win it because so it's an eternal war. And so you can always keep taking people's liberties away. And I said, how are you going to convince people that this war is real? He says, but the media. The media can convince everybody it's real. I mean, you know, it's just that you keep talking about things. You keep saying it over and over and over again, and eventually people believe it. You know, you created the Federal Reserve in 1913 through lies. You create 9/11, which is another lie. Through 9/11, then you're fighting a war on terror, and now all of a sudden you go into Iraq, which was another lie, and now they're going to do Iran. You know, and it's all one thing leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Now, I would say, what are you doing this for? What's the point of this thing? You have all the money in the world you ever want. You have all the power. I said, you know, you're hurting people. It's not a good thing. And he would say, what do you care about the people for? Take care of yourself and you take care of your family. And then I said to him, what are the ultimate goals here? He said, the ultimate goal is to get everybody in this world chipped with the RFID chip and have all money be on those chips and everything on those chips. And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off their chip.
That's right, microchipped. In 2005, Congress, under the pretense of immigration control and the so-called war on terrorism, passed the REAL ID Act, under which it is projected by May 2008, you will be required to carry around a federal identification card, which includes on it a scannable barcode with your personal information. However, this barcode is only an intermediary step before the card is equipped with a VeriChip RFID tracking module, which will use radio frequencies to track your every move on the planet. If this sounds foreign to you, please note that the RFID tracking chip is already in all new American passports. And the final step is the implanted chip, which many people have already been manipulated into accepting under different pretenses. In the end, everybody will be locked into a monitored control grid where every single action you perform is documented. And if you get out of line, they can just turn off your chip, for at that point in time, every single aspect of society will revolve around interactions with the chips. This is the picture that is painted for the future if you open your eyes to see it. A centralized one-world economy where everyone's moves and everyone's transactions are tracked and monitored, all rights removed. The most incredible aspect of all. These totalitarian elements will not be forced upon the people. The people will demand them. For the social manipulation of society through the generation of fear and division has completely detached humans from their sense of power and reality.
When studying ancient warnings, one would find it difficult to overlook writings from the Bible, which shockingly provide warnings of a worldwide devastation and also hint to a pole shift occurring, described as taking place before what most people refer to as Armageddon, a worldwide war for resources and survival.
There was a great earthquake, and the sun became black, and the moon became as blood. Every mountain and island were moved out of their places, and there were voices and thunderings and lightnings. There followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. There should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened.
This phenomenon is called pole shift, in which the entire mantle of the Earth would shift in a matter of days, perhaps hours, changing the position of the North and South Pole, causing worldwide disaster. Earthquakes would rock every continent. Massive tsunamis would inundate coastal cities. It would be the ultimate planetary catastrophe. As unlikely as this theory seems, it is backed by science. Albert Einstein first suggested it in 1955, and a new study from Princeton University reveals that the poles have shifted before. The North Pole rested in the middle of the Pacific, placing Alaska at the equator. Even if this pole shift took place slowly over years, it would result in global climate change and shifting sea levels. If it took place rapidly, it would mean planet-wide disaster and mass extinction of species.
Chief scientist of the IRAS satellite actually announced having found this planet December 30th, 1983. It was picked up by 6 dailies. It made the Washington Post. It's one of those daily newspapers that picked it up. Very quickly thereafter, they wanted to make sure people understood that it was a mistake.
Alsina then speaks of another war to come, a war in which Russia slides back into communism and joins China and the Middle East. Russia slides back into communism and joins China and the Middle East to fight against America and Germany. The war is won by the West, with Germany becoming the leading economic nation on earth. England is all but destroyed in this fight. I see a great war, fast and furious. It will be fought mostly from the skies. I see weapons that we have not even dreamt of. Germs that cause sickness and electric rays that devastate the earth. That Russia is creating a new USSR, and that the Americans have not abandoned their Star Wars program. In these days, Africa will fall into anarchy and mass starvation. In these days, white racism will be on the increase all over the world, especially in Europe. For the Afrikaner nation, it will be a dark time when many forces will be aligned against it. But then, he says, the Afrikaners will rise again and regain their freedom. The nation will take their destiny into their own hands. There will be a great silence before the storm. I see a pail full of blood toppling, falling. And from the pail will rise the Fyrkleur flag to fly again over a free nation. When will this happen? When people asked, he simply said, the time and place is known only to the Lord. But there are some indicators. In 1916, he tells his friend, there will come a time when I will be once again in the news. In those days, I see we are still fighting amongst ourselves. Then it is over, and we will have a black government. It is then that the Afrikaners' final and fiercest struggle will begin. And then he said something strange. This will come to pass when the ice starts melting.
In the winter of 2005, scientists made a frightening discovery. Increasing global temperatures were causing the Greenland ice sheet to melt at an alarming rate. With the help of satellite sensors, scientists saw that the glaciers had softened to the point that they risked a sudden collapse. If that happens, it would cause a catastrophic rise in sea level.
If we continue on business as usual, it will be this century, and very possibly before the middle of the century.
You mentioned the sea level would rise 20 feet alone if Greenland melted. How does that affect the world?
Well, that kind of an increase would inundate most of South Florida, most of South Louisiana, parts of Manhattan. In the low countries of Europe, like the Netherlands and Belgium, they would be almost completely covered.
China, 250 million people would be underwater. Almost the entire nation of Bangladesh.
It's even been speculated that if the sea level rise occurred fast enough, some major cities might have to be abandoned, like for instance London, because it's too complex and too expensive to build the seawalls as high as are necessary.
Are you going to build a wall 25 meters high around Florida? I don't think so.
You're talking about hundreds of millions of refugees. I mean, this is That's huge. I mean, I think it's impossible to imagine a strain
It is.
on the system quite that big.
It really is. We have seen what happened when 100,000 people were displaced from New Orleans and the Gulf Coast communities. And it's difficult to imagine a couple of 100 million.
You're going to see mass migrations on a biblical scale. Obviously, the movement of people into new areas and the social ramifications of that are going to cause real problems.
As an estimated 1 billion people worldwide are forced inland by rising waters, the remaining habitable land will ironically be gripped by a different kind of water crisis.
In the West, 75% of the water comes from snowpack. We're going to lose that snowpack. We've built up cities, huge cities, that depend totally on that water.
With the planet's fresh water in short supply, it would become increasingly difficult to grow crops, setting off a worldwide food shortage, igniting a new set of crises.
The United Nations identifies something like 150 flashpoints where wars may be fought over water.
War, famine, and drought, coupled with an unstable climate system, could push the death toll into the billions.
This is a level of disaster that the world has never seen.
Yet Adolf Hitler is the closest we can come to understanding the Christian vision of the Antichrist. Like Hitler, he will mesmerize the masses so that he can enslave them. Hitler's 1,000-year Reich lasted less than 12 years. During those years, however, the control that Hitler exercised over peoples and nations was awesome. Yet by today's standards, the tools that he had with which to control them were primitive. There were no electronics as we know them. The prophesied dictator, the Antichrist, will be an updated Hitler. But unlike Hitler, all of the astounding advances in electronic technology will be at his disposal. Vast media networks and mind control electronics will serve his ends. The most destructive weaponry will be his to command. And he will program humankind to do his bidding.
In Revelation chapter 13, we read, "He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name."
We are told that the final method of exchange will not be with money, but will be done with an assigned mark that is put upon the right hand or the forehead of a person. Now with modern technology, not only do we see this as a potential, it is happening today.
It's interesting that in our day and age, there is a technology emerging that Hitler or Stalin or any world dictator would dream of, and that is the electronic mechanisms by which one can control all commerce within a nation or perhaps even the whole world by cashless transactions with barcodes, with implantable chips and what have you.
People often wonder, are we really in the last days? I mean, what is this talk about, the last days? There are a number of signs that the Bible gives that really identify our generation as the first one that you could say is in the last of the last days. This thing is about to wind up. One of them we find in Revelation 13, where the Bible says a man will arise who will control the world. Now, you've got to have a lot of technology to control the world, and part of what he controls is all banking and commerce. You couldn't have done this in the past. You couldn't have even imagined doing this in the past. And somebody's coming, and he's going to control the world, all banking and all commerce, and we have the technology to do it today, technology that was never even dreamed of in the past.
In the future, some companies envision a self-serve supermarket where every item is scanned as you walk through the store. No waiting, except for...
Excuse me, sir.
...the occasional hassle of human interaction.
Forgot your receipt.
Maureen Maher, CBS News.
Call it, leave your purse at home. Soon it may not matter at all because all of that information could be accessed through a chip so small that it fits inside your body. NBC 10's Dawn Timoney explains.
It's called a VeriChip, no bigger than a few grains of rice. It's implanted in your arm.
Different implant for the human body. It's a microchip that can be used for identification and to get medical help. No bigger than a grain of rice. This chip is at the center of a growing battle over its benefits and drawbacks. CBS's Bobby Harley has both sides of the story and the first people to get the chip.
Freddie wears a beeper-like GPS gadget and was also injected with a VeriChip. Implanting both devices would give him and his family more peace of mind. But privacy advocates have...
We need some system for permanently identifying safe people. Most of us are never going to blow anything up, and there's got to be something better than one of these photo IDs. A tattoo somewhere, maybe. The Saudis used an American device to scan the eyes of travelers. I wouldn't mind having something planted permanently in my arm.
Everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people, and you become a slave, you become a serf to these people. That's their goal, that's their intention. How do I put it? It was like, what do you care about them? What do you care about those people? What difference does it make to you? Take care of your own life. Do the best you can for you and your family. What do the rest of the people mean to you? They don't mean anything to you. They're just serfs. They're just people. You know, it was just a lack of caring, you know, and that's just not who I was. It was just sort of like cold, you know. It was just like cold, you know. And I used to say to him, what's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need. You have all the power you need. What's the point? You know, what's the end goal? And he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society.
I'm not talking really about backwards masking, I'm talking really about backwards messages. In fact, one way to do it, which wouldn't require demons or higher intelligences to intercede, would be just to take straight words, take 7 or 8 words in a song, and reverse them. And then when you played it backwards, you would hear those words. But when you heard it forwards, what would you hear? You'd hear something backwards. It wouldn't make sense. So when people talk about how backwards masking is done in the studio, yeah, that kind of backwards masking is done in the studio. No problem. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when you hear music and lyrics forward, and then you hear those same lyrics backwards, and it's a message forward, And those same words are a message backwards. Okay? And we're not talking about one or two words. We're not talking about something like the cat and playing it backwards and trying to get something like tack backwards and something out of the. We're talking about sometimes over 15 words straight. We're talking on Stairway to Heaven right around 30 words. Okay? And we're not only talking about that, we're talking about a song that wasn't engineered to be heard backwards, but came right from the spirit world automatically. Okay? And then we're talking about, if you wanted to make lyrics backwards on a song, you're going to mess up that song forward pretty bad, right? Well, Stairway to Heaven is the most popular song in rock and roll. So this destroys any kind of argument that comes against it. And what destroys it more is the lyric forward often has everything to do with the lyric backwards. And to take it even further, you can hear a lot of these same things on live albums backwards. Because it's the demonic spirits using these human beings. Do you understand that? So let's listen to it. Remember, first of all, that they were invoking Satan, that they got it from Satan, and listen to what you hear backwards. Forward. Your stairway lies on the whispering wind. Forward it says, and your stairway lies on the whispering wind. Backwards it says, because I live with Satan. Listen carefully. Raise your hands if you heard that. Quite clear, quite obvious. There's a lot more. Backwards it says, here's to my sweet Satan. Did you hear that? Listen carefully. It says, I want to live it backwards like the Zep, whose power is Satan. Did you hear that? Then it says, he will give you 666.
Was that I got 7 years in which the devil would give me anything I wanted. He'd given me wine, women, song, dope, power, you name it, I'd have it. Then at the end of those 7 years, he got to kill me and take me to hell. What a deal. Anybody want to sign up? Yeah, you see, you got to understand something. The satanic doctrine here is that hell is not what we believe it is, or what the Bible teaches it is. The satanic doctrine is that hell is this incredible party. Hey, Satan! Play my tune!
Jim Morrison, too, was into Aleister Crowley. And right here, I want to show you a picture on the back of one of his albums. And here you see Jim Morrison, and under him you see a little statue of Aleister Crowley. And Jim Morrison, too, was into demonism and admitted that he was possessed by spirits. He will give you 666. Big deal. The mark of the beast will come out. People will take it on their right hand or their forehead, and then all of a sudden they'll get grievous sores on their right hand, and they'll say, hey, what's going on? It's not working. There's some kind of reaction to this mark. And then before you know it, according to Revelation 14, everybody that takes the mark of the beast will be damned in fire and brimstone, it says, forever. And the smoke of their torment rises up forever and ever. Big deal. It's a big deal in this sense. The people that take the mark of the beast, the people that are rejecting Jesus right now, are not going to make it into God's kingdom. And we need to reach people and say, hey, the scriptures say, Jesus said, except you repent, you shall all likewise perish. We need to turn to him wholeheartedly. Where are you turning at this time? Who are you following? Not to follow Jesus is to follow Satan according to the Word of God.
And here's a group of neurons right here.
And at the University of Southern California, Theodore Berger has shown that brain cells called neurons can grow onto microchips and communicate with them.
That the capability exists for building computer chips that act just like nerve cells. And we're developing the capability for interfacing those computer chips with the brain.
And Ray Kurzweil sees a day when microscopic computers will make all kinds of learning as easy as downloading.
You would be able to do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
Is it possible that you could download information into one of these chips? And stop me if this is silly, and give somebody instant knowledge.
It's not.
In the 1960s, Professor Jose Delgado took a normally hostile bull and implanted electrodes into its brain, electrodes that could be activated by a radio transmitter. His objective was to see if stimulation of the bull's midbrain could short-circuit the rage signals, stopping the bull before it reached the matador. After the bull had recovered from the implantation and in mid-charge, the button was pressed. The bull's aggression ceased instantly. A clearer experiment was performed with cats. In this classic example, the hypothalamus, the rhythm maker, was implanted with electrodes. Could it be responsible not just for rhythms, but also for rage? The switch is turned. Then the switch is turned off. So indeed, the hypothalamus does control certain types of aggression.
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over. Can brain scans be used to determine whether a person is inclined toward criminality or violent behavior? You will rule on that.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Make you say. 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 Make you say.
Politicians are advancing a global plan, the plan of the Antichrist. This is the doctrine of Lucifer, which Freemasons, Knights Templar, and members of the Illuminati global network of secret societies follow. Their goal is the total spiritual and ecological destruction of the world. They use advanced technology to spy on and kill whoever gets in their way.
Which is being actually carried out right now, is to create conflict, to create wars. And through the creation of wars, several things happen. First of all, the companies which manufacture the missiles, the guns, the bullets, the uniforms, and all of the paraphernalia to do with warfare, all make huge profits. Secondly, there is a culling of the male population. Since the 1950s, we've had several reports from think tanks that feed information into the European Union, the British government, and also the American government, which are recommending depopulation. And there is several plans which we believe have been put in motion right now. And obviously war is one way of depopulating the planet.
Binary chemical weapons.
Now this is an excerpt from chapter 2 of Eleanor McBean, who was a PhD, her swine flu expose, entitled The Flu 1918 and Now. This is a picture of the 1918 Spanish flu that killed millions. She says in this excerpt, I was an on-the-spot observer of the 1918 influenza epidemic. All the doctors and people who were living at the time of the 1918 Spanish influenza epidemic said it was the most terrible disease the world had ever had. Strong men, hale and hearty one day, would be dead the next. The disease had the characteristics of the Black Death, added to typhoid, diphtheria, pneumonia, smallpox, paralysis, and all the other diseases the people had been vaccinated with immediately following World War I. Practically the entire population had been injected or seeded with a dozen or more diseases or toxic serums. When all those doctor-made diseases started breaking out, all at once it was tragic. She goes on to say that pandemic dragged on for 2 years, kept alive with the addition of more poison drugs administered by the doctors who tried to suppress the symptoms. As far as I could find out, the flu only hit the vaccinated. Those who had refused the shots escaped the flu. My family had refused all the vaccinations, so we remained well all the time. So the rest is history. 50 million people died worldwide, and that's probably a very conservative estimate. So the evidence strongly suggests the Spanish flu of 19 was actually created and then spread through vaccinations. But the panic-stricken public demanded a vaccination, not realizing that that was the way in which the disease was spreading. Will history repeat itself?
I don't need another flu shot. I had a flu shot last year. A swine flu epidemic may be coming.
Swine flu shot? Well, I don't know. I've been thinking about it.
It could make you very sick.
Swine flu? Man, I'm too fast for that to catch me.
You'll want to be protected.
I'm the healthiest 55-year-old you ever seen. Hey, I play golf every weekend.
Get a shot of protection. The swine flu shot.
The Book of Revelation warns of an age of destruction, where planet Earth will be writhing in pain like a mother giving birth. The Book of Revelation prophesies the birth of the Antichrist, who will emerge to wield great political power across the planet. The plan of the Antichrist is very simple: famine, plague, war, total annihilation of all living creatures. This will be done, apparently, by mass killings of children around the world. Famine, pestilence, plague, and war will be used to kill thousands of children each day. In actual fact, before our very eyes, every day 26,000 children die from starvation and preventable diseases such as the common cold.
The FEMA plans to imprison American citizens have generated a lot of interest around the country in locating the potential prison camps throughout the country, or facilities that have other uses but which could be quickly used to detain large numbers of people, such as this Amtrak facility in Beech Grove, Indiana. All of these apparent security measures are particularly unusual here, because this is a very low crime area, and this facility is nothing but an old train repair station with nothing in it worth stealing. In this portion of the parking lot is a brick building, suitable for processing, next to a gate that leads right out to the railroad tracks, and all of this is contained inside a fully fenced area, now 3 layers deep in fencing at this point. This U.S. Air Force train indicates federal and military involvement. Facing the opposite direction, you can see that this area, too, is a very large fenced area with railroad track running the length of the fence and plenty of warehouses. This small building is the only way into a particular fenced area. Inside this building, we see more of the motion-activated detectors, electronic turnstiles, and prison bars. Outside this building is fencing and a cattle run section of fence, all topped by barbed wire, pointing inward, not to keep people out, but to keep people in. On the other side of the building, you'll see signs that say Red Zone, right up next to the railroad tracks that run the length of the fenced area. Next to the Red Zone sign, you can see closely numbered markers on the fences that are too closely spaced to be parking markers, just as if they plan to have people line up to board the trains. Looking around, you can get an idea of how huge this place is and how many people it could contain in its fenced-in area. In yet another fenced area, we see a large warehouse building at the end, with the electronic turnstiles in front of it. The building is one that has a new concrete floor, and its doors and windows have all been blocked. Outside, there are new gas pipes. Even as we were filming, a black helicopter flew over us, observing what we were doing, which has happened many times when we have been at the facility. The gas lines and gas pipes at the facility run the length of the buildings. And come out at some very, very large, brand new furnaces that have been installed at the buildings throughout the facility.